Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and alongside me is Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good?
Today's we are going to be reviewing some midweek action from the Premier League and the FA Cup, and we will also be previewing this weekend's action for Matchday 26 of the Premier League. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. But let's get straight into some EPL action first. Arsenal won 4-0 against Everton. The lead is 5 points with the same amount of games played for both Arsenal and Manchester City. And what a way to sort of extend that lead, one would say. Convincing performance, and I'm going to have to just pat my own back, and I predicted that it was going to be a heavy Arsenal win. But please, Mac, take us through the game.
Overall, I thought it was a professional performance from this Arsenal team in terms of what you would expect. Very early on, it did look like Everton had a strong defensive shape. It was not till the 40th minute until Arsenal did get on the board. Everton were playing very, very tight defensively, had a couple of opportunities actually on the counter, weren't really clinical enough up there to punish Arsenal early on. And it was a matter of time before the breakthrough did happen. And Arsenal, you definitely say, after that first goal, went on to play some very beautiful football, especially in the second half. Very champagne, champions, kind of arrogant. A lot of the commentators talking about it, and a lot of talk after the game was just how dominant they were, especially after they took the initial lead, because Everton did try to come out and play a little bit, but that just left them further and further exposed to Arsenal's class up front. Overall, in terms of stretching out that lead and because it's been months we've been talking about that game in hand, for it finally to take place, pick up all 3 points is great, as well as how easy it was for them to be able to kind of rotate their squad as well. A lot of people were to be able to come in off the bench because they have another game, and they're going to be coming quick for Arsenal over these next couple of weeks, because they have I think it's Sporting Lisbon in the Europa League as well, and back-to-back weeks the next following 2 weeks, and of course the Premier League as well. So matches are going to come quick. So having a good, clean win, strong performance, and really everyone had the opportunity to play well, even in the small cameos that Ramsdale did have to make. He did his job. So overall, it's really all positives from this performance.
Definitely all positives for Arsenal. Gio, not much expected from Everton. I think we can all agree. Away to Arsenal after a negative result in the weekend against Aston Villa, I believe. Is this make it harder for them to, keep themselves out of the relegation zone, especially after 2 now back-to-back results that are negative for them?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, although it is against the top team on the table, I think it just drains every fiber of their confidence that they did have of beating them one time. I'm sure Sean Dyche kind of gave them, a great pep talk. We did it once, we can do it again. Type pep talk along those lines, but obviously they're just outclassed. The players were better, tactics were better, finishing, the whole 9 yards, like down to a T, it was all better than Everton, and by a mile as well.
Yeah, it could have. I mean, goals did take place very late in the first half, Mac, and so technically they could have gone into halftime 0-0, but obviously the goals changed the games. Odegaard with a celebration. I'm not sure if you saw that, Mac. He was very, very happy with his goal and sort of his involvement. But Arsenal just so good at pulling defenses apart with sort of the midfield runs from Odegaard and even Granit Xhaka, providing options for the cutbacks, which I think was used for 2 out of those 4 goals. I guess, can you talk about sort of the importance of the front line rotating the goals around them, given the fact that Gabriel Jesus and I think Nketiah just came back from injury, but Jesus is on his way back, and how that really helps Arsenal really maintain that push?
Well, it's interesting because these last couple of games, prior to these last couple of games, sorry, it was Nketiah starting as the striker with Martinelli playing off on the wing. And these last couple of games, it was Leandro Trossard playing centrally through the middle. But a lot of the times, you'll see him float out to the left-hand side, Martinelli come in, where there's a lot of changes of positioning, kind of free flow in that final third position, which really drags defenders and they don't know who they're supposed to be covering in a lot of situations. In terms of the first goal, you can see Mykolenko, he's looking towards the center back. At that time, Trossard had shifted in and kind of pulled him a little bit away and not realizing the soccer run was coming in behind. So plays like that in those moments where you have players kind of, you don't know really where they're going to be able to hit you from. It kind of puts them in a position where, since they don't know what to expect, it potentially leaves those gaps open for players to be able to jump in. Even on, as you highlighted, Odegaard, because when he comes in, it's not kind of a traditional kind of crash the run, but the crash the box run that he was making, because Saka was making that for him. For when he scored his goal, he was able to kind of drop back a little bit to be able to kind of go into a space where it was a little bit easier to be able to receive that pass from Trossard. So overall, that the front three can be dangerous. I think the key for them though is once they do get that first goal and teams open up, it puts them in a position where there's so much more space for them to be able to play with. And even into the second half, you can see there's such a different level of expertise in their team. Going from, I know Gio the last time on our podcast was giving a lot of praise to Jorginho, but you see the level of difference in the second half to the first half when Partey comes on, where there were almost no chances in the second half for Everton, because whenever there's the counter, that attempt to be there, you have a strong physical presence and that person that's able to also be able to hit the break at the exact same time. So he's really much a complete defensive midfielder, and that first half to second half performance, you can see where if he's playing week in, week out, you're arguably talking about one of the best defensive midfielders in the world. So it's great to see that type of performance. I do want to touch on, though, I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of jumping all around different places, but Saka's goal, the first goal for Arsenal, the way that he shot it with his right foot, we've seen this a couple times within this season where on the right-hand side, normally you'll see in those positions, most midfielders kind of a la the Mahrez's or Arjen Robins would cut to their left foot and just kind of stick it far post. He very much, it seemed like, make the effort more difficult for himself, where he put the ball more so to his right foot and he really only had one spot to hit it, and it was very, very hard, very, very high. We've seen that, like I said, seen that a couple times, something he's really practiced, but it goes to show that he's even putting himself in a position to make things more difficult, and he still could be very, very successful. So I think as long as these results keep coming and these types of performances keep coming for Arsenal, they'll be in fine shape for the rest of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure if there's a case to be made that Pickford should have done better getting beat at his near post for that attempt, but definitely great finish by Saka. If I'm not mistaken, I do remember him scoring a similar type of goal. Was it in the World Cup, or am I making this up? I think it might have been something.
One in the World Cup similar to that with his right foot, if I remember correctly, and then also one against, I think it was Crystal Palace, if I remember correctly. So he's done it a couple times where normally in those positions, you'll see them, the winger either, if it's on their weaker foot on the outside, they're just going to kind of try to cut the ball back in because the expected goal ratio for that type of shot is not very high. But both he and Martinelli in those positions freely take shots at that near post in their weaker foot. So I think maybe it's something that Arteta has given them license to be able to do in that final third, even though sometimes when you're watching, I'm like, hey, just cut it back for the tap in. But if he's going to hit it like that, you can't be mad.
Definitely not. Gio, now, Mac alluded to Partey really canceling out any chances that Everton did have towards the second half, but they did have a chance to be able to at least get one on the score sheet late in the game. But again, the chances that they had, Ramsdale was very ready for that chance, and then the defense was able to maintain that clean sheet. And I guess question for you is this sort of the clean sheets that Arsenal are able to keep in these types of games, the difference between themselves and Man City. Obviously, because now we know Man City this season haven't been as great defensively. Would you say I'm looking too much into that, or is there a case to be made for that?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think Man City are finally feeling a team that's kind of chasing their tails, and they felt it, and they're kind of and they were kind of caught off guard by it in a sense. Arsenal, again, when you're talking about, for example, Man U being ahead of the project, Newcastle being ahead of the project. Arsenal really just made the jump, and they are ahead of the project. You expect this young team, to take a couple of years, maybe a year to, play together and really, hone their skills with each other. But yeah, no, they definitely exceeded the plan, and they're playing very well. So I think it's just the confidence level between Arsenal and Man City. Although Man City beat them, it's not anything. I don't think they're phased at all at the fact that they beat them, because they're winning all these extra, weaker sided matchups, and those are where you pick up very important points. You can't let up in those games by any means.
Okay, definitely. On that note, Arsenal are taking Bournemouth this weekend. Bournemouth obviously on the back of a loss to Man City, and now facing Arsenal this weekend. Will it be another convincing win, Gio, for Arsenal this weekend, or do you think there could be a chance for Bournemouth to bounce back and maybe get a positive result here?
Again, I think the main thing is again understanding it's all these games now in the second half of the season are very important. But again, we've seen Bournemouth come out to hot starts against bigger clubs, so you really can't count them out. And that's where they kind of get their sort of their goals is when teams least expect it. Of course, we see Man City come out and really just deal with them very early in the game, score a couple of goals, concede one late, but at that point it was already well out of reach. And I think Arsenal, if anything, with that front three, are very capable of doing the same thing, if not better. So, yeah, I mean, if they were to concede like Man City late in the game, I don't think they'd be too flustered, but I think they'll have control of this game from start to finish.
And same question to you, Mac.
I do think it's going to still be a comfortable result. The difference would be is I feel like just as Everton can be, I think, in certain times, especially under Sean Dyche, you see this change where for large sections of the games, they can be dominant defensively and kind of shut you out of what you want to be able to do. I think Bournemouth are not as strong in that aspect. The difference, though, is that I feel like they do offer a little bit more up top in terms of a challenge, a la Kiefer Moore, Solanke, a bigger gentleman in the box to be able to kind of get at balls, because to be frank, Neil Walpay, whenever he did have a chance, I just assumed it was going to be a miss. He has a better chance of scoring from 30 yards than 3 yards, to be honest. He's not that guy. So I feel like that would be the difference, where maybe if those pot chances do happen for a striker that Bournemouth do have, that they might have a better opportunity to put one away. The difference, though, is I think Arsenal should have a little bit more free reign offensively, where it doesn't take that long potentially to get that first goal and really get a steam rolling. So for me, if either team scores a goal early into the game, that's going to be a clear indication of is Arsenal going to panic or Bournemouth already out of the game. So I think heavy favorites, of course, for Arsenal in that way. But I think this Bournemouth team might, as I said, pose a little bit more of a threat.
Yeah. So like Gio said, don't let your guard down if you're Arsenal, but also try to score early to sort of kill the spirits of the other team and settle the tie early. So, Also, Everton are going to be facing Nottingham Forest this weekend. The first game between these two teams was a 1-1 tie at Everton. We'll definitely keep an eye out for that result. But if I may, guys, I want to quickly move on to another game that took place in the Premier League this midweek. Liverpool 2, Wolves 0. I watched this game, a bulk of it at the very least, and it looked like a very open start to the game. Both teams had chances. Konate notably came back for Liverpool, but still, that defense looked very, very shaky, Gio. And we know Lopetegui and how he sets up his Wolves teams. They're always going to be a threat from definitely set pieces with the likes of Ruben Neves and even through their new signings, Paulo Sarabia, and I know that Cunha didn't play this game, but he's also been involved with the goals. But yeah, it looked like a game where both teams just couldn't get that until I guess the goals went in. Couldn't really get that final pass or final shot in. Gio, is that sort of how you saw this game?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's just very frustrating just knowing, sort of that kind of seeing the tides change on that team, especially under Lopetegui. Maybe they just, if if this is the case, and they play generally quite well against Liverpool as a whole game aspect, but just missing that final piece of the puzzle. Yeah, it's a tough season, but now you know what you're looking for in the summer window. And I think right now, Lopetegui is definitely crying out for someone who can really just put the ball away. I don't think Jimenez is the guy anymore, or was the guy to begin with, as Mac would wholeheartedly agree.
100%.
But yeah, no. And then I think there's that Silva boy who obviously hasn't grown into himself yet. But yeah, he'll definitely be looking for a number 9 that can finish. A true out and out striker. Just to finish those chances, really. But no, I think Wolves shouldn't hang their head in terms of the score being 2-0 and not being able to score. I think the score sheet doesn't really recognize how well they actually held the game.
Yeah, definitely had chances to get on the score sheet, and definitely one part that really gave me some anxiety was seeing Adama Traore getting his arms oiled up, good to come on for the second half to cause havoc down that right-hand side. Thankfully for Liverpool, the chances were limited for Wolves after the goals came in, but I was always just questioning where the goals would come from in this game, because, again, that final pass in the final third from both teams just wasn't falling, and so if nothing else really works, set pieces are definitely something that teams will have to defend against. And I guess should we look into sort of the ways that Liverpool scored goals in this game? Were they mistakes from Wolves? Were they great plays from Liverpool? Is there something more to analyze here that I'm missing, or is just simply number of chances that you get? Something's bound to happen, and then some goals are bound to be scored.
Well, if you take a look at it this way, is that Liverpool did have 15 shots, 6 on target, which overall for a game is not half bad for their type of performance. So it seems like they still had an abundance of theoretical opportunities, where any of them outside the goals really, really high quality, because they were prime A goals in positions where you want to be able to score them. Van Dijk on the goal line, pretty much, and Nunes, I think it was, in terms of. Salah, my apologies, right? Salah for the second goal. Right in the middle, easy tap in for him off a Simicast pass. Overall, I feel like in terms of if you're looking at this perspective of Wolves, there's not much you're going to be able to do for those 2 individual goals. I don't think there are necessarily individual mistakes there. Maybe that 1-2 from Gakpo Simicast on Liverpool's left-hand side, they could have done a better job managing that, but that's more like a one-off mistake, and it goes in off of Mohamed Salah's thigh, right? Which, of course, full credit to him to be able to have the body contortion, still make contact and put it in. But I still don't think you can look too harshly on them. As well as if you ask them at the beginning of the season, between 2 games for Liverpool, you pick up 3 points, would you take it? Absolutely. So I think, though, this does at least defensively for Liverpool, even though, again, it is against Wolves and they don't offer as much offensively. There wasn't really any clear opportunities, I felt like, other than I think there's Alisson had to make 1 save through the entire game. So there wasn't really much that he... Early in the first half, and it was a decent opportunity, of course. I think it was off of João Moutinho when he played a 1-2 just inside the 18. So it wasn't like a clear grade A scoring chances in the same way, and you would expect Alisson to stop, the keeper of his quality, to stop a shot like that. So you have to take the positive, I think, on Liverpool's side, is these defensively, they're getting that going. And I think that's going to be important for them. This win does push them up into 6th in the table, so they are closing the gap, as we had talked about, to be in that top 4 position. And I feel like week over week, if they can be under the radar, slowly climb up. I understand Newcastle have a couple of games in hand, but they are now, I guess, if you have an outside shot of making a top 4. And I feel like, if they can be under the radar, just kind of focus up defensively, the goals will come as long as they kind of keep creating opportunities like this, even if they don't score them as an efficient of a right. Given the kind of the amount of opportunities they do have, they'll score enough. It's just, can they be solid enough defensively to make sure that they, don't drop points?
So, great question, which we'll talk about later in this podcast. So let's move away from Liverpool. Gio, the next game for Wolves is against Spurs this weekend. Spurs obviously lost their midweek game against Sheffield United. I know you're smiling there. So they're now out of the FA Cup. But Spurs did win the first fixture between these two teams with a Harry Kane goal from a corner. I guess you could say it's a very different two teams that are set up right now. Spurs have been on a decent run of form in the league, but I think winner will definitely be decided with the first goal for whoever scores this in this game. So, Gio, how do you see this game taking place?
I think Spurs have everything to prove, and I think their fan base is quite livid with them, losing 1-0 to Sunderland, was it?
Sheffield.
Oh, Sheffield, sorry. Sheffield. No, that's not acceptable, especially when they know it's going to be tough for them to win any other trophy at this point. You got to see where you can pick up a trophy, but Spurs being Spurs, that mentality is always that mentality. That drive is always that drive. They don't want to win. It doesn't seem like they want to win. What seemed like an easy win with the players that you have, it didn't seem like they were up for the challenge or really wanted to play the game, and that's what you get. Someone wants to win, and it was Sheffield.
See, I don't know who's happier after Tottenham lose. So I see a lot of my timeline, like Arsenal fan TV, like those group of guys, and they seem ecstatic. But I'm like, they're not even happier than Gio when Spurs lose. It's very confusing for me because immediately after the Everton, so I see that on my Twitter timeline. I pull that up, and they're celebrating. Like Gio's like so much happier than these guys over this result. I don't understand. You guys need to step up. You should go on Arsenal fan TV, Gio. I think that's what you should do. And join them for Spurs.
I'd be on there if they'd have me. I'd be on there.
Hey, who knows? He might be already running those accounts. But hey, who knows? We're gonna take a quick break here, guys, and then we'll be back touching on some of the FA Cup action. So stay with us. Welcome back, guys, to House of Footy. We are going to continue our podcast now, touching on some FA Cup action from midweek. Man City was in action against Bristol City, away this time. And honestly, Foden with another masterclass. City, though they did concede a couple of chances, if they were playing maybe a team more in form and the striker more in form, they could have had some problems, but I think ultimately dominating possession 70% overall, and the 3 goals that they were able to score, Man City was always going to be favorites for this tie. What did you think, Mac?
I definitely agree in terms of what you're saying in regards to Foden. He finally seems like he's rounding into shape in that Man City lineup, because he's had a tough time coming around back into form after kind of being away for the team for a couple of weeks. But him being in a position to be able to start in the same lineup that both contains Mahrez and Alvarez, and you have no Haaland, you have no Grealish in that starting lineup, so he's really be able to get to show out on an offensive sense, where in a front 3 you saw a lot of movement between what position he's going to be able to start off on, as well as how potentially he can use his ability to be able to create for his teammates. So overall, definitely a phenomenal performance from him, and great to see for him to be able to get on the score sheet. Was the second goal actually called as an own goal, or was that actually called as his goal as well, by chance? Do you guys know off the...
So it's given as a Foden goal.
Yes.
It looks like it should have been an own goal, but hey, it's given as a
That's
Foden
fair.
goal.
To be fair, in those situations, the defender doesn't want the own goal, and the attacker does want the goal. So I feel like it's a fair shake. Like the whole last year with the Lacazette situation, and you two dickheads were like, no, that's an own goal, Mac. You're so stupid. You're biased. Blah 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 blah. But I was right, as we can see here. Moving on. So definitely for Foden. It's interesting to see, though, his development and places, different areas that Pep has used him in, because in these last couple of games when she did start was actually instead of Mahrez playing on the right-hand side, but he started on the left-hand side this time as well. So you see the flexibility and the trust for him to be able to kind of be in any position and still be very successful and bring an attacking mindset to the team, as well as it's weird to say that Kevin De Bruyne kind of got a warm-up game because he's been in and out of the lineup, got to start against the Bristol City in the FA Cup match, score a phenomenal goal. Maybe that, again, will kick him back into form because he's been definitely in and out of it over the last couple of weeks, even though he has scored some great goals, but it hasn't been kind of at that De Bruyne standard. So even though Man City, as you said, did kind of give away a couple of small chances, this may be a type of performance that does hit them back into their stride, where they can go on that that tear that they generally do towards the end of the year for different titles.
And what a luxury to have, Gio. Kevin De Bruyne coming back after being sort of like out of form, or I think he was also out with illness, but coming back straight into the starting lineup and giving us that performance. He was vital in that first Foden goal with the 1-2 that he played with Mahrez, and then that ball that he played for Nathan Ake for the cutback for Alvarez, and then gets played out eventually to Foden for his second. But Gio, what are the Bristol City defenders doing, backing off and giving Kevin De Bruyne that type of space in the middle of the pitch? You know there's only one thing on his mind and how he's going to execute. So is he back to his usual self, Gio? And what do you expect from sort of this rotation that Pep is sort of bringing to the team, with the likes of like Kevin De Bruyne coming back and giving us that performance?
Obviously, it's just a warm up game for the rest of the Prem, because Bristol City haven't really they haven't seen the Prem in quite some time, so they're probably more starstruck than really just ready to play football. They're like, whoa, Kevin De Bruyne, that's fucking amazing. But yeah, no, I think if I'm a fan, I'm hoping this is obviously just like a preparation game for what's to come in the Prem. Obviously, we hate to see when Pep makes his rotations. We want to see Pep do Pep things, and that's usually a pretty set lineup. Yes, he has the luxury to bring on certain players, but those aren't your starters for a reason. You have to put your best team out, and sometimes and again, we stress this again, like he loves to overthink and rotate players in and out, but going forward, he just needs to play his best team and stick with that best team, especially during the big games. Because if they're going to catch Arsenal, that's the only way they're going to catch them.
Yeah, and definitely catching them is a very important thing to do with the next game in mind. They are going to be facing a Newcastle team that is off the back of obviously the EFL Cup loss, but I guess Mac, the first game they played early this season, a 3-3 thriller, where Newcastle were sort of coming into form and announcing themselves as a top 4 contender. How do you see the performance that they have in this game translate into a performance against Newcastle this weekend?
So I'm a little bit worried in regards to this game for Newcastle. They have been on a poor run of form. They haven't won, I think it's in their last 5 games. That's including the cup final as well. Going 3 draws in a row prior to losing their most recent game in the Premier League against Liverpool. So I am a little bit worried about them, because that 3-3 performance, in a lot of the ways, looking back towards the beginning of the season, it felt like a different Newcastle team. They felt rambunctious. They felt aggressive. They felt like at any moment they could potentially take City on. But it seems like this team is reserved much more into just that, being reserved, where they're going to try to be more defensive, not as much on the front foot. Maybe this is a type of game, because City love to be so high up in possession. It does give players like Saint Maximin, maybe Almiron, a little bit more room on the counter theoretically, and they're not going against traditional wide backs where Rico Lewis, Kyle Walker, if they're playing, will end up being more shifting more towards that defensive midfielder role, kind of playing in those inverted full back positions. So if that happens, that does theoretically give more space to those wide players on certain opportunities, and that's kind of how Newcastle in the first matchup really took advantage of this of the City team. But the City team are on a different run of form right now. They seem aggressive. They seem like they're taking away their chances. They seem defensively to have really picked it up over the last couple of weeks. So there are some positives there for them. The interesting part, even in Gio said, in terms of Pep needing to play his best lineup, the reason why he didn't against Bristol City, didn't have to, because at the end of the day, if they win the FA Cup, they won't care. It's irrelevant to their season. It's just a nice, I guess, a little bit cherry, to the point where he's starting Calvin Phillips. Like, who forgot that he was even on the team? Me.
I totally forgot.
What's going on here? I thought he was just supposed to be permanent IR position. You know, like if you play fantasy and basketball, that's a lost cause. You will see him next season. You know, but no, he started. He played. It was great. Rodri didn't have to be able to come in. So, but this game in this matchup, I think City were like, no, this is the time that we have to completely dial it up, and it might be the worst time for Newcastle to have this type of game because they're coming off. I think they'll still be out without Nick Pope for this game, if I remember correctly, because this will be the third match served for his ban. But they will at least they won't have to play Karius. There'll be Dubravka coming in for them. Maybe there's some difference there. I don't really see it, but they're probably missing arguably a top 3 goalkeeper this season thus far against a team that's going to get a lot of shots and was outstanding for them in their win. So I really feel like this is a very, very tough game for Newcastle. And Man City, where they're firing right now, I don't see a natural way for Newcastle to pick up any points, really.
Interesting. I actually think Newcastle might have a chance. I take everything that you're saying, Mac. The run that Man City is on, and really now they're looking to chase Arsenal down. But Newcastle would have had a week to prepare Gio for this game off the back of that disappointing loss in the finals, and what other way to really get that out of their minds with a big win against former last year's Premier League champions. So Gio, do you give Newcastle some chance here for a win against Man City? And if you do, how do you think they'll win it? Do they have to score early? Are they going to look at set pieces? What is the game plan for Newcastle in this game, I guess?
That, my friend, is called wishful thinking. Because coming off a loss, especially in a cup final, and then to face, arguably top team in, skill-wise in terms of the Premier League, that's very wishful thinking from you. But no, I think the best way, if they want a chance, is obviously, I don't think they have the skill set to really control the game via, containing the ball or even possessing the ball for majority of the game. I think the best way that they're even going to have a chance is, hitting them on the counter. ASM, maybe Anthony Gordon. Sorry. Right? Bring those guys on, when Spurs seem a little bit more tired, and just trying to hit them from there. If the game's close, try to hit them from there, because that's the only way I think that they can really get at them is with their speed.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle for Newcastle, and so we'll definitely see what this game has in store for us. But again, FA Cup action midweek saw Man U play yet again another cup match, and Gio victorious again, 3-1 over West Ham, literally off the back of the EFL Cup final. And got another, I guess you can say, overall great team performance, getting that result at the end. What were your thoughts on this game?
I was a nervous wreck. First of all, the ball was out. But they came back, and that's all that matters. But no, I thought under Ten Hag, they kind of have this, again, what Man U fans of old like to see is that never giving up attitude, that fight in their game. They never really looked like they were out of it. When Man U are playing teams like a West Ham or like lower table teams, I always say to myself, even if they're down, if they score one, the goals are going to come. And that's exactly what happened. And even when Casemiro scored that goal, it kind of already changed the mood in the stadium again. Old Trafford was kind of buzzing again. Of course, it was called back, but the chances kept on coming, and then finally off a poor own goal actually from West Ham, they kind of took their opportunities from there. And again, with that attacking front, it's hard to really contain them for a full 90 minutes, and then you have the likes of Garnacho really just all the confidence in the world in himself, especially really just placing the ball as cool as you like and hitting the side net was a fantastic goal.
Yeah, great finish for him. I thought Ben Johnson should have done better. I thought he gave him a lot of space. He either gets tight and tries to block the shot, or just get out of the way and not obstruct the goalie's view. But hey, Garnacho, great finish. 90 minutes as well. Sort of get that crowd back now that they're leading. And like Ten Hag said, this team really doesn't know how to lose. And so that sort of mentality is showing now. Mac, what did you take away from this game? And is this sort of a poor loss for West Ham, given the fact that they were in the lead, or is it just how their season has been going this season?
I definitely feel like this. It's not a poor loss in some ways, because if you take a look again, I know I always come back down to this. If they reduce their fixture list, for them, it's going to be a benefit going into the Premier League, as well as I felt like for. I guess watching back some of this game, they had opportunities. It's very rare to say you have 7 shots on target against a Manchester United team with only 40% possession. So in some areas of this game, I felt like they were doing what they needed to do. It was just unfortunate, I guess, for them, where they kind of shot themselves in their own foot and put themselves in a position to be able to kind of lose games. That's more so for me, is where they can blame themselves, but there's still a large positive to take out of this, as well as Areola in net for them. He's a keeper with some level of reputation coming over from Ligue 1. Of course, Fabianski has been their starter. He's out injured, but Areola himself seems like a very strong keeper. Of course, I would argue he didn't have his best game. Maybe a little bit unused to the physical nature of the English leagues, and that's maybe something that he wasn't adjusted to. Trying to come up across his on that last goal, you can just see he's just guessing. There was no thought process there whatsoever. So again, I feel like you can draw a lot of positives from this West Ham performance. And I think with Ten Hag, as he said, in terms of they don't know how to lose, I think he's continuously put in a position to be a good coach, because they've won the game. Yes, fantastic, lovely. There's a lot of things they can still improve. And he's going to be able to like, hey guys, we did this. We're fortunate from A, B, C, but we have to work on E, D, E, F, G, H, I, follow the alphabet, I'm sorry, to be able to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen again. So I feel like for both teams, even though I do feel a little bit hard done for West Ham in some nature in terms of the overall scoreline of how they performed, I think there's large positives for both teams from this game.
Yeah, for sure. On that note, on that West Ham note, Gio, they are facing Brighton away this weekend. They did lose the first fixture 2-0 at home to Brighton. And you know, the season that Brighton have had, I know that they're a couple of games in hand. 22 games played so far. I think fewest in the top half of the table. They're going to be definitely looking to add on to their position. And West Ham, you know, they did get an important win against Nottingham Forest in the weekend. But how do you see this game playing out now that Brighton will be playing at home and West Ham are looking to again move themselves higher up in the table?
Obviously, they'll feel like you know, it's a tough loss, and it was. You know, they didn't play poor. They came out in the second half quite strong, actually. In that FA Cup fixture. But yeah, I just think Brighton are a better team at the moment, and they'll always, you know, and they've come out with their game plan for since the very start of the season. They've had a game plan, they stuck with it, and I mean, it'll be a nice sort of battle in the midfield to see, you know, Declan Rice, you know, kind of battle Moises Caicedo to see who's, you know, the better midfielder in form. I think it's still really Declan Rice, but yeah, I just think Brighton have a better team in general. There are a lot of individual talents in West Ham, and we've agreed on that. They just haven't clicked as a team, and I think they will fall short against Brighton this week as well.
Okay, Matt, quickly before we take a break, is this if Brighton can get the win here, would this really cement themselves as, you know, the team up and coming, maybe even potentially taking over that West Ham spot that they're for so long have craved, you know, just outside of that European qualification zone?
Yes and no. I think they're closer to, let's say, a Leicester, because I feel like they are going to get pillaged sooner rather than later. Kind of like that Leicester team. Of course, I don't think Brighton are going to be in a position to win titles, but still being in closer to that top level. Whereas I feel like West Ham, their type of players that they have, not as many of them other than, say, outside Rice, you kind of see leaving off this team versus Brighton, McAllister, Caicedo, Matoma. If they're on the team 2 years from now, I think we'll all be surprised. So I feel like it's a little bit different. I think this individual game, though, I do want to. I feel like I'm personally going to lean towards West Ham a little bit more, actually, because I feel like Brighton are kind of scuffed some opportunities in the final third sometimes, and West Ham are good enough to give them defensively not as many. So, and if Danny Ings is playing, because of course Mikel Antonio started this past game for the FA Cup, he should be coming back in. If they need a couple chances, he could bag one away. So I feel like West Ham, in my opinion, I'll disagree with Joey here. I think they might come out and win this game.
Okay, definitely something to keep watch. So we're going to take one last break here, guys, and then we'll be back previewing some upcoming EPL games this weekend. So stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are just going to finish off the podcast with some preview for the upcoming EPL games. The big one for this weekend, Liverpool versus Manchester United. Hey, can't stop talking about Man U and sort of their run of form recently. And speaking about the first game of the season, the first game between these two teams in the season, Man U did win that one 2-1. Goals from Sancho and Rashford, and then a late one by Mohamed Salah to make it a, I guess, more even looking scoreline. But I guess based on the run of form, Gio, Manchester United should be the favorites for this one. What do you think?
Whether they are favorites on based on the numbers or anything like that, I think I would still side with the Man U. I think you'd have to favor Man U on this one. No matter where they're playing, I think Man U are up for the challenge, and I think they have more than capable players, especially in the front, to kind of exploit that high line again. So if we're expecting what we expect from Liverpool, expect the high line, and expect Ten Hag to try to take advantage of that. With balls over. So yeah, no, I think more so the offensive. I think it's going to come down to Manchester United's midfield and how great of a game they have in order for them to have a successful game. Those long balls coming in, have to come from someone, and it's likely going to be the midfield. So it's going to be crucial for them to have a great game to facilitate those balls in order for them to get scoring chances to begin with.
Mac, I love how Gio mentioned the midfield, because who would have thought Manchester United would have the more consistent midfield compared to Liverpool at the start of this season. And it definitely has shown that, even with some key injuries to Christian Eriksen, Man U's midfield has been resilient and even outperforming a lot of the other midfields currently in the top four. And so I guess question to you, same question, Mac. How do you see this game playing out?
I think this is a very interesting game, and I think could be a bellwether game for both teams, because either team that comes out and picks up full 3 points, I think, is now going to be drawing a lot of headlines, going to garner a lot of attention for the respective race of what they're looking to do for the rest of the season. Manchester United come out and kind of have a smashing performance and really dominate Liverpool. I think this will further cement them to potentially a lot of people talking about them being in the title race, versus if they lose, I think people are going to have them exit that conversation that they're a little bit too soon to be able to kind of engage that. Whereas for Liverpool, if they come out similarly and come out with a smashing performance, pick up all 3 points, hey, now they're breathing down the necks of all those top four teams, and that's going to be much of the scuttlebutt around either of those teams' performance, and vice versa, come out and have a very piss poor performance, you can kind of see them exit out of that conversation even more so than they already are. So I think this game is very, very interesting and such a bellwether for both teams. I see this a little bit differently. I do think that as of right now, Manchester United, in terms of how they've been scoring a lot of their goals, have been on the counter, have been through Rashford, have been in some sort of that types of possession. So I think that's going to be a key area to look at for Klopp. And I trust his adjustments, where he's going to, of course, recognize that Rashford's having the season of his life. So we need to be able to do whatever we can to stop him. And outside of him, if you really run down the most recent goal scored from Manchester United, it's been mostly mistakes from the opposition, creating opportunities or kind of last second kind of moments, right? Versus there hasn't been that consistent threat where, you know what, if I see this player going 1-on-1, if I see this player in the final third, I'm really worried about them scoring. So I think that's more so where the game will be decided, is if that matchup between, if it's depending who starts at the right center back position and that Trent position, that's exactly where Rashford's going to live. I think that matchup is going to dictate who's going to be successful in this game. If Trent's spending a lot of time on the ball, Rashford's not having the opportunity to get out, no one's tracking Trent, maybe there'll be opportunities for him to kind of drop balls into boxes for the attacking Liverpool front three. Vice versa, if Rashford's catching him on the back foot, not maybe just once throughout the game, because we can guarantee that's going to happen, but maybe it's 3-4 times where maybe he's bagging 2 goals and creating an assist, something like that, and then the game's going to go very differently. So I think this is one of the few games this season where it is a proverbial flip of the coin. It could go either way, but I'm very excited to see what will happen.
So are you guys ready to review a 0-0 tie for Tuesday? No, I'm kidding. But I love how you touched on it. Obviously, a lot riding on this, and I think ultimately it will come down to which team makes the fewer mistakes or who makes the more costly mistakes. And based on the run of form, it sounds like it's going to be Liverpool, even though Liverpool did win against Wolves. Virgil van Dijk was interviewed after the game, and he did mention it started to feel a little anxious in the crowd. In that Wolves game, obviously it was 0-0 up to I think it was the 70th minute. So the longer it goes 0-0, the more anxious the crowd will get, and that I think will play into the Manchester United favor. But in terms of expected lineups, Gio, Weghorst has been a steady fixture for United ever since he joined. But I think there's going to be another player who has been, I think, involved in a lot of goals and assists in the last couple of games for Manchester United. The boy, Fred. I think he might actually be playing a very, very vital role in exploiting that space left by that inconsistent midfield by Liverpool. And hey, the run that he's on, definitely, I feel like he's going to have a say in the result of this match.
You said it, but I wouldn't be mad to see it. Federico has been balling. Federico has been balling. I mean, it's nice to see. Sorry?
Macheda? Federico Macheda? No?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Federico. But no, it's obviously nice to see him get goals. He's not known to be a goal scorer, but he's doing a very decent job at cleaning up balls that come out. And, he's just waiting for his opportunity. I think Fred of old, would sky a lot of balls. And don't get me wrong, he still skies a lot of balls, but I think he just has a different level of confidence now that he's put a couple in the back of the net, that he's able to score. And when those chances come, I think players or defensive players defending a player like Fred kind of have to make that step up against him. And kind of opens up the options for him to pass the ball off to, a trailing player as well. So, that can only be a good thing in his books and in Man U's books. Now that players have to close out on him, it opens up the space for other players around him. So, couldn't be happier, and wouldn't be happier to see him play in that match and, be a difference maker in that match.
Yeah, on the flip side, Liverpool have had Firmino on the bench for a couple of their most recent games. Jota playing a big part in the Wolves game as well. So injuries coming back. Konate likely to start in that right center back position for Liverpool. Maybe a little more coverage and more defensive minded defender in that right side for Liverpool. So, Mac, I'm gonna have to push you here. What is your final prediction? And Gio, you also prepare for yours as well.
I'm gonna go a 2-2 game. I think it's gonna tie. I think they'll see a lot of goals. I think it could be very exciting. I think that there's enough mistakes from both these teams. I think not to disparage Manchester United, because I think obviously they have been a great run of form. They have done very, very well to win a lot of big games, but a lot of the games have been by the skin of their teeth, I would argue, where they haven't had a dominating performance. Even in the cup final game, the whole second half, it was just kind of a barrage to see if they can kind of withstand it, which they did, to their credit. But I feel like this Liverpool team in the front three, especially if they, just as Manchester United, want to be able to get out and counter them, Liverpool, if they're able to do that themselves, maybe this is the time where Ten Hag's like, oh, let's try to see if we can keep the ball a little bit more. That gives a lot more space for players like Nunez, Gakpo, Salah, who all are effective getting in behind to be able to create opportunities. So I think that there'll be enough goals for Liverpool to kind of create goals from themselves, as well as still be aggressive enough where they're going to make enough stakes to create goals for Manchester United in some ways. So I think that's how I'll see it more so play out, where in some ways both teams shoot themselves in their own foot enough times for a game to go to 2-2. So I think I highly doubt this will be a 0-0 game, as you said. I think it'll be a 2-2. I'm going to go 2-2. As well as I can't pick between my boys, the Gio Ray Derby. I have to be, neutral here. So call me Switzerland.
Fair. Gio, same question.
I'm going 2-1. I don't care. I don't care. I'm going. Oh, for who else? Liverpool.
Okay.
Yeah, get the fuck out of here.
That's my guy.
No. I'm taking the Man U win here. Again. I know I've said this in the podcast, not a betting man, but...
Okay.
I'm betting.
I'm not a betting man either, but I would love to see some cards here, potentially a red card with tensions up in this game. I won't be surprised if that happens. So let's quickly move on, guys. Just a couple more notes here. Chelsea are taking on Leeds. Big game for Chelsea, because might be Graham Potter's last game, potentially. Leeds did win the first game between these two teams early in the season 3-0 away from home. Their high press had Chelsea in hell. And obviously since then, there's been a lot of changes at Chelsea, especially with players and management. Thiago Silva looking to miss a big chunk of time as well with a knee injury. So potentially a new centre-back pairing with Wesley Fofana pairing up with Koulibaly or Badiashile. Mac, how do you see this game taking place, especially with Leeds having a new manager, Bounce having won at Southampton last week?
So, I completely be honest, I know you put this in the document because you're the one that did the document today, just so we could take a minute to laugh at Chelsea. So I appreciate you for doing that, and that's why you're one of my best friends. So thank you. In regards to that, this game I feel like could very much similarly play out as their last game did, because Thiago Silva has probably been their most consistent player thus far this season, because you've had moments where Reece James was phenomenal, Sterling's been great, Joao Felix, since he's come on, I think he scored their goal of 2023 for them, I think it is, because it's only been like the one goal, but it was a great goal, so hey, but without him having the calmness, composure, I feel like that's against a Leeds team that can be rambunctious, can be aggressive, can be kind of guns a-blazing. I know that's kind of fitting because they're American, but in that way, I feel like it might be a little bit too much chaos for kind of a younger, more inexperienced backline for Chelsea. If they do move into, if it's a Fofana and Badiashile, I do think Koulibaly should come in. I wouldn't be surprised maybe if they try to rotate to a back three. I think that could be an interesting twist, just to give them a little bit more cover. The question is, and I think it's going to come down to this, will Chelsea score? Right as of right now, we have no evidence that they will, given their recent performance. They have really no evidence of their ability to break down a wet piece of tissue. So I think they'll. But the benefit to them in this individual game is Leeds are just as piss poor defensively as they are offensively. So there will be opportunities. It'll be interesting to see the players that do end up kind of fixturing in. I would be very interested to see if there is either a Havertz or a Joao Felix drop from the starting 11. Maybe bring in and more, have just one of them play in a traditional attacking striker role with maybe a Mount behind them, and have more aggressive wingers where they can start playing forward, because it seems to be that missing gap between the midfield and attackers, and that space hasn't been correct because they've been taking up a lot of the same areas. So I think that could be an interesting twist. But overall, I think Chelsea should win this game. If they don't pick up all 3 points and Graham Potter it still has a job. I think we can officially report that Todd Boehly has forgot that he's the owner of Chelsea. I think that's the only thing that would make sense of how he still has a job. Yeah.
Fair.
Sorry.
Gio.
The other reason he would still have a job is that he has photos.
My
for
bad.
sure.
You know,
True.
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 The only
that makes sense.
logical reason.
Do you think like the Ayew brothers, like Graham Potter, they like have a group chat together? Be like, yo, these are the photos I have. What photos you got? You know, like all those people that we know shouldn't have a job but still do. Like DeAndre Jordan in the NBA has photos of somebody. You know,
I think a handful of these people, they're in a group. The upper echelon of life.
Gotcha.
To have these photos.
The real Illuminati.
You're set. The real Illuminati of the sports world, at least.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, well done.
So, great discussion. Let me bring it back though, Gio, just before we wrap up. Your predictions for Chelsea versus Leeds for this weekend.
I'm hoping to see a 0-0 draw. I just love to see carnage, and I think this, both teams don't win. I think both teams leave unhappy, and it would almost at that point, apart from a loss, would have to force Todd Boehly's hand. It's just not enough from the money they invested, and I feel like they can put a decent team out, but he just hasn't put in a decent team out in order to get a result, and that's shocking because a lot of managers can do a lot with the players that they have, and I think a lot of people would agree. Time, I agree he should have, but the results with the time that he's already have don't kind of balance each other out. So I think if they don't get a result here, it's goodbye Graham Potter and maybe hello Pochettino.
Oh, hey, a lot of things could happen between now and our next podcast. Aston Villa could beat Crystal Palace and leapfrog Chelsea into 10th position, meaning Chelsea would be in the bottom half. So, hey, a lot to cover in our next podcast, so definitely tune in for that then. This concludes our podcast for today, guys. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @house_of_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, feel free to get in touch with us as well via email, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Like I said, the next time you hear from us will be Tuesday when we review the Premier League games from this weekend, and we look ahead to some upcoming European knockout games. Thank you, Mac, for joining us.
If there is actually a group chat with those photos, please let me join, if you can hear me.
Thank you, Gio.
I would like to take along.
Hey, make it 3 out of 3. I'll join too. Peace out, guys.